I need to talk about the word failure. Because if you grew up in certain church spaces, failure wasn't just a word, it was your identity. I was called a failure. Not directly, maybe. But the message was clear. You're not leading your family well enough. You're not pure enough. You're struggling with the same sins again? Clearly you're not repentant. Every time I messed up, every time I admitted I was struggling, the response wasn't grace, it was disappointment. And eventually I internalized it. I started believing that I was the problem. That if I could just try harder, pray more, be better, maybe then I'd stop failing God. But here's what nobody told me: I wasn't failing God. I was failing an impossible standard created by people who needed me to stay small. Because when you're convinced you're a failure, you're easier to control. You don't ask questions. You don't challenge bad teaching. You just keep trying to earn approval that was never actually available. And that's not discipleship. That's spiritual abuse. Let's talk about what the Bible actually says about failure. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. And Jesus didn't call him a failure. He restored him and said, "Feed my sheep." Paul called himself the chief of sinners. And God used him to write half the New Testament. David committed adultery and murder. And he's called a man after God's own heart. The Bible is full of people who screwed up massively, and God didn't disqualify them. He met them there. Because the God of the Bible doesn't operate on a performance-based system. Religion does. Toxic church culture does. But God doesn't. Romans 8 verse 1 says there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Not no condemnation if you stop messing up. Not no condemnation once you get your act together. No. Condemnation. So if someone is still holding your past over your head, still reminding you of every way you've fallen short, still treating you like you're disqualified, that's not God's voice. That's control. So here's what you can do if you've been labeled a failure. 1. Write down every failure label you've been given. Bad leader. Unsubmissive. Struggling with sin. Rebellious. Not spiritual enough. Then ask yourself, who benefited from me believing this? Because often, the people calling you a failure were the ones who needed you to stay insecure. 2. Identify whose voice you're hearing. When you mess up, whose voice plays in your head? Your pastor? Your parent? An ex? That's not God. That's trauma. And you can learn to distinguish between the two. 3. Find one person who doesn't need you to perform. One friend, one therapist, one support group where you can say I'm struggling and the response is me too instead of you need to try harder. You can't heal in isolation. 4. Give yourself permission to be human. You're not going to have it all figured out. You're going to mess up. You're going to have bad days. And that doesn't disqualify you from love, from growth, or from God. 5. If you need to, take a break from the voices that keep calling you a failure. Unfollow the accounts. Stop going to the church. Distance yourself from the people. Protect your healing ferociously. You're not a failure. You were just surrounded by people who couldn't handle your humanity.